Let's get started with some of the subject matters related to extinction, okay? Let me go with this, see if we can go through it fast. Here my son will control me so that I don't spend too much time. Fellow says, what is blowing up is Marxism, okay?
Marxism is blowing up?
Yeah, and capitalism. Capitalism has won in China. See, you can see China is now blue and it's the United States, which this fellow argues is going to be red, or is red, where the new empire will rise post-2030s. So he predicts that after 2030, China is going to be the new empire. And it's not going to be communist, it's going to be, I guess, capitalist, right? Marxism is blowing up in Europe right now, will blow up in the next 10 years. The governments have gone along because of the great collapse in confidence in government. Trump, I guess, fellow is into politics a lot, okay? And he says, collapse in Marxist promises all based on borrowed money they plan on defaulting on. Okay, so they borrow a lot of money, they're going to default, and what's going to happen? Well, he says extinctions of governments are inevitable. Okay, is this what's going to happen? If we have an extinction of government, okay, what's going to replace it? Government?
The next one. I mean, that's kind of how it's always worked, revolutions, right?
Is that what it is? We get, but nobody's saying it's the extinction of governments.
Governments as such. Like, there's not going to be any after that, is what he's saying?
Yeah.
Just anarchy.
Yeah, but it's a polite anarchy. It's not the guy with the Molotov cocktail.
There's no such thing as no government.
No?
Because, I mean, that's just how human beings are. Even back in the day when there's clans, you can't, I mean, it's far-fetched to call it government, but it's a form of government. It's a form of how do you organize 8 billion people? That's what we're talking about.
Well, what if everybody governs himself? I guess that's what he's saying. He's saying everybody just does his own thing without any law governing him. He just does it because it's the right thing to do, I guess. And if someone commits a crime, I don't know who takes care of that. I know the anarcho-capitalists say, well, you can resolve that also through marketing mechanisms. You know, how you punish someone, maybe punish the person through money, through his pocket. So I don't know what comes after no government.
They never talk about that part.
Yeah, I know. At least they don't go in any great detail. Marx also said this, by the way. You know, the idea was that, you know, we were going to get this world government taken there by, what is it called, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Once you reach that point, you get rid of government altogether because you find out that you don't need it, and what continues from there on forever and ever is anarchy. Anarchy in the best sense of the words, meaning no government whatsoever.
This guy says, when the government's gone, we'll go back to the Shire. The Shire's from Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits go.
Okay, let's continue.
We're friendly with each other.
Okay, let's continue. Imagine a person who has so much food they could never eat it before it perishes. You don't think they would trade any of it for anything at all? Nonsense. Why didn't trade grind to a complete halt when all of the fiat currencies in the past died, Bill? Well, they didn't die because they didn't all die at the same time. See, when the dollar dies, that's it for all of us because all currencies are essentially pegged to the dollar. Okay, I would trade food for an object if I thought the object could get me more food soon. Not after the final collapse. After the final collapse, if you trade, you're trading your life.
I love the example. Trade a fish for a rifle round so you can kill a deer. I think that trade will be done against your will. You know what I mean? You'll get the rifle round.
My God, the way you think.
You'll get the rifle round. He'll get the fish. Trust me.
Oh yeah, you come for the rifle. You're the one who put the egg in the.
You're looking for a bullet. I got it with your name on it right here.
Okay, and I said, you said you cannot stop people from trading. This is in direct contradiction to your theory that trade will fail because money fails, okay? According to your black market facts, trade will continue regardless of what happens to the money in use today. Yeah, I said, I gave the example of Cuba where people, despite it, they're in a communist country, they have all this black market out there, and the trade is primarily for food, which is interesting, right? And so here's my answer. Can't stop people from trading as long as the global economy is running. As long as the Cuban peso is still out there on the streets, yeah, there's going to be trade. It's the question what happens when money is no more. Will there be trade?
I mean, sometimes I try to think back of just historical times. How did they trade back in the day when there was no money? When we're just talking about bartering.
Subsistence farming came into commercial farming. That's when they started trading. A guy was a better carpenter or
so
whatever.
So they never traded before then? Here's the question. Was there in the history of humanity ever a time period where where it was bartering without any money?
Yeah, in fact, you can see it in the Bible. The story of Ruth. Okay, if you look up the story of Ruth, the book of Ruth in the Bible, she worked for barley. She put her work, she traded her labor, collected barley, and part of that barley was that she collected, part of that was used to pay for her and her mother-in-law, which she also maintained. Okay, so yeah, there was a time where people worked for food.
But it's always under the umbrella of government. You can't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
have
of course.
free trade in the sense of like no government trade. Why wouldn't I just shoot? Why would the guy with the bigger gun not just take it? That's
Well,
the question.
I think the way it developed is that, this farmer was over here, the other one farmer was over there. Maybe a lot of them were relatives, clans, or whatever. And from there, what developed was, oh, you do this better than me. Why don't you give me your chair that you made? You're a better carpenter, and I'll give you some corn for it.
Yeah.
So first, it was within people you trusted. Obviously, it had to be either an extended family or neighbors that for some reason you eventually managed to trust. And, the little villages developed, the tribes. How did the Indians do it? The Indians, American Indians, for example, they developed their societies. And you say, how did this guy at some point decide to trust that other guy over there? And, it had to be at some point where, that trust developed because they settled the land. They started maybe farming or even hunting, and they, for some reason, did not shoot at each other.
Yeah,
and they
find
finally
that hard to
went
believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened. I think it was always under the umbrella of one big muscle guy saying, "Hey guys, play nice," i.e. the police. There was always a form of police going around. There has to be peace before there's trade. That's what I'm saying.
Within the clan, I can understand that perfectly.
At all times.
No, but I mean within the clan, especially, right? We can imagine that there's this alpha guy, I guess you could call it, patriot kind of guy, and he set down the law, and those that were weaker said, "Okay, we'll follow that law. I think it's good for me, for my health." And so from there, I think that's where law came into being, government came into being.
But I'm just saying the difference between what this guy's saying. I'm saying the end of the world kind of anarchy and trade don't mix. That's what I'm saying. Because you have to have peace, you have to have no guns before there's trade. There has to be that repercussion if you renege on the trade or mess up the trade or something. There has to be consequences, or they have to at least be certain that you're not just going to shoot them and take the stuff. Yeah. It's kind of like a illegal drug deal kind of things, where they have the pounds of cocaine and the other guy's got the millions of dollars or whatever.
And one does not come up with the goods.
Not only that, but you never see them come with no AK-47s because then the other guy just thank you. That's what I'm saying.
Or they both come with AK-47.
Yeah, just to make sure.
To make sure it's even.
Make sure it's even, exactly.
It's an even deal.
Trade and anarchy just don't really mix.
Okay, regarding family, we have here, get rid of Social Security, and then one of the reasons to have kids magically reappears. Okay, so he says, I stated it in a different way. I said, if the state won't take care of you when you're old, you better start having kids. That's essentially what he's saying. He says the laws are the problem instead of the cities. Remember, it's one of the reasons that we stop having kids is that the state takes care of the old as well as of the kids.
Social Security made us sterile? That's kind of
it's one of the factors, okay, but it's not the most important factor. Again, the most important factor is we move from the country to the cities, okay, and that's the main one. Okay, another fellow along the same lines, similar, says women don't have high school degrees have more kids. Who don't have high school degrees have more kids or babies. In very rural areas, we have more parents that homeschool. There is no school bus for them. Significant family traits are taught in that environment. In government-run public schools, there isn't much of a presence in family values.
That's true.
Okay, but so what am I going to say to that? Well, let me say the following. I'm saying that family has changed through the ages. Okay, hunter-gathering, we had the clans. Era of farming, maybe last 10,000 years. We had patriarchy. Man of the house, he was the head of the household. He had power of life and death over everyone, from slaves to the wife. Okay, and then manufacturing, we ended up with the nuclear family, essentially mom, and pop, and the kids. And today we have the singles society, the bachelors. We don't marry, or we're all divorced, or we're just casual.
Actually, hold it on. In this picture, another thing that I was thinking of was just now they were talking about the family values not being so not being so
prevalent.
Yeah, so prevalent in modern schools. And I think it's gone even a step further. Like the further back you go in time here, the hunter-gathering is pure family values. And then it becomes more about the society and less about family as you go to the right. And now we have the extreme case where children are really being raised by the internet and have no family values.
Yeah, but I want you to see something else there in that graph. You see that when we started in hunter-gathering, it was the many, and today we ended up with a few. Yeah. It's gotten smaller and smaller over the years.
More individualistic.
Yeah. So the question is, what comes after bachelor, after singles?
The nuns.
We're already there.
NONE.
Okay, continue on here. Again, people say, people come to the cities to create wealth. Okay? Wealth is what reduces populations, and that is why the poorest nations have the highest birth rates and the richest nations have the lowest birth rates. Well, I'm going to counter that. I'm going to say that this is not true, and this is a very widespread misconception that people have out there. Not only this fellow, but a lot of people have this idea. So here's my idea to oppose that. Okay, here you see it.
Looks like a correlation.
In the 19th century, it was the filthy rich who had kids. Okay, I hope to destroy the notion that it was today, because we see poor people having kids in the cities. We say, oh, it's the poor people. It used to be the rich people who had kids. In fact, that last one, the yellowish one there, you know who that is? That's Israel and his 12 sons, because he was a rich guy.
He could afford them.
He could afford them. He had someone to bequeath the land to, the sheep and all the stuff he had. That's why he had many kids, because he was a farmer. And it's when we went to the cities that we stopped having kids. Not so. So it's the fallacy of, I drink beer with water, and it gets me drunk. I drink wine with water, it gets me drunk. I drink whiskey with water, it gets me drunk. So it's water that's getting me drunk.
That's the correlation mistake.
Yeah, and people here commit the same error. They say, oh, it's the poor people who have kids. It's got nothing to do really with the poor people. It's the poor people who came from the farms. They have no jobs in the cities. They either bring their kids from the country because they just came to the city, or they have still the culture of the country, and they bring that in there until they realize, especially the next generation, their kids, they realize you can't have kids anymore in the cities. Okay, so it's the city that stops the children from coming up, not so much the fact that they're poor. Why don't rich people have children? Okay, in the cities. Okay, why did they have them in the 19th century?
That makes more sense.
Okay. Another issue, I mentioned this the other day, where we have the man who turned himself into a woman. Fellow in red there, you can see he looks pretty much like a man. And he changed his sex when he was over 30. That means he spent his whole life as a man. And then he snipped it off, turned himself into a woman, and now fights women in his category, and he's beating the crap out of them. And some women don't like that, So I mentioned this the other day, and, and I said, well, why don't we have unisex sports where we stop separating men from women, and we have everybody compete against everybody in every single sport. In other words, whether it's soccer, American football, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, whatever you can think of, especially the rough sports, everybody against everybody. No more female, no more male, okay? So we don't have to worry about this. And a fella replies, says, well, they can never win because they don't have testosterone. Okay, well, I don't know about that. I'm sure that if we take some of these girls who do kickboxing and so on, I'm sure they could beat the crap out of this fellow. Okay, and so he's got testosterone, they've got estrogen, but I'm sure, that if he fights one of these gals that is well-trained, I think I'd put my money on her. Now, so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because what I showed the other day is that women have come up the ranks, okay? And here you see it. You see this is 1936, the 100-meter dash. It was won by a fellow that's just famous. His name is Jesse Owens, or was Jesse Owens. Second guy was also Ralph Metcalf, another American, both of them black. And the third record, if they were to run in 1936 again, it would be Florence Griffith, who's got the women's world record today, right? And she would come in third, and she would beat this other fellow, Osendarp. And after him, it would have come the gal who won this year, who's Elaine Thompson. And she would have beaten the other three guys, all white, by the way, which have records which are lower than hers. Okay, so women have come up the ranks over time. They have become faster.
That's in 1936.
Yeah, 1936. So the question now is
anymore.
Yeah, no, but this is the point. The point that is, you give women enough time, will they match men? This fellow says no because they don't have testosterone. Well, apparently testosterone has, I don't know. I'm suggesting, right? Play devil's advocate here. Maybe it's got nothing to do with it because here you have women who would have beaten men in the 1930s, right? Today, right? And if we give them another 100 years, maybe they're at the par with men. Maybe it's got nothing to do with testosterone and estrogen. We just think of women as the weak sex. And again, there's some women out there that can beat the crap out of many men. So I don't know about the weak sex. Okay?
That'd be really weird to see.
Yeah, but I mean, just given enough time,
no,
yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm suggesting it because I'm saying if everybody competes against everybody, right?
No, we don't have to worry about it.
Women, well, yeah, because the end of the world is near. But
I mean, you don't have to worry about like genders or any of the trans.
Yeah, if we do sports unisex, no more of this Olympic for women and Olympic for men. We just let everybody compete against everybody. Will women come up the ranks? And, I mean, after all, I'll give you an example. His name is Bruce Jenner. Today he changed his name and a little more than that, right? And he was the decathlon winner. I can't remember the year, but he won the gold medal. and he thought himself as a woman. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguments there on all sides, defending and attacking. My point here is, this guy at least thought he was a woman. He thought as a woman, or thinks as a woman, and he beat the crap out of a lot of men out there. So, well, just food for thought. Okay. Okay. Paul says women have influenced their husbands throughout history. Yeah, and there we have a case in point. Who was it? Eve.
They weren't married though.
Yeah, but
they had sex out of wedlock.
But see,
I don't see no ring.
You see what
Who married him?
She convinced Adam to take the bite. So is there always a woman? They say there's a woman behind every successful man. That she's the one who kind of pulls the strings, or at least influences him significantly. Okay, another issue. Money. What is money? Well, we had different people talk about what money is. One guy says the most saleable good.
What's saleable mean?
Well, that I guess that you can trade it easier. It's liquid, right? But he defines currency as counterfeit money. That's why he says that money is not the same thing as currency, because currency is counterfeit money, fake money, okay, monopoly money. Okay?
You saying currency is like the representation of wealth?
Well, he's saying that currency is what we have in the what you trade, what you really give in exchange, I guess, right? Again, it's not very specific, so we can't make sense of that. But anyways, another fellow says currency is money that is being used or is in circulation. Okay, money is something used as a way to pay for goods and services and to pay people for their work. Another fellow says something similar, says bank account, money is being used to pay salaries, buy groceries, pay rent, and as long as it's used for goods and services, it keeps circulating in the economy and paying for many different things, okay? And another fellow says money is debt, okay? Being an owner means being a subject that pays tribute to the state.
We got a lot of opinions here about money.
So people have a lot of different notions of what money is. Money is no longer, what we always thought it is. Apparently not to everybody. Everybody has a different perspective.
My perspective of money is like a favor.
A favor?
It's a favor that goes around.
Okay.
I give you paper, you give me a favor. You give that the next guy that paper, he gives you a favor. That guy gives. It's just a favor. It's favors going one way, bills going the other.
I see it differently. I say money is what it says on that dollar bill. In God we trust. Money is trust. That's all it is. Once we lose faith, once we lose trust,
that you're going to get a favor.
Or something in exchange, whatever. Okay, but my point here is that money is trust. You trust that the other guy is going to give you something, or has given you something in your hand, or promises to give you something, and you accept that promise, right? Because what is the dollar? It means that you can take it to someone else. You trust that other guy is going to accept it as well. But when we lose that trust, what is the value of money? Zip.
How weird would it be if you go to the supermarket to buy some apples and they're like, "Oh, sorry,
we don't accept money.
We don't accept money."
Well, you can do that today.
How fucked would you be?
No, hold it. You can do that today. Do this experiment, okay? Trust me, okay? Just take some Vietnamese money to your supermarket and see if they accept it. And if they say no, you say, hold it. It's money. It's backed by the government of Vietnam. Yeah.
Like, we don't accept that Disney money. We accept our.
I thought money was money. Well, it doesn't seem like it. Okay, continuing here. The money supply increases when banks make loans and decreases when borrowers pay principal back to the banks, okay? Fractional reserve banking is how banks make new money, okay? The Federal Reserve prints money based on nothing. And clarifies here, the world's current monetary system became debt-based after the Nixon shock. What is he talking about? Talking about in which President Nixon suspended the link between money and gold in 1971.
Is that in concrete language that you can't turn in money for gold anymore?
Yeah, let me clarify that here. In fact, this is what it is. It's important for people to know this. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management, dating to 1944, established the rules for commercial and financial relations. The chief features of the Bretton Woods system were an obligation for each country to adopt a monetary policy that maintained its external exchange rates within 1% by tying its currency to gold. The United States, which controlled 2/3 of the world's gold, insisted that the Bretton Woods system rest on both gold and the US dollar. On 15th August 1971, the United States unilaterally terminated convertibility of the US dollar to gold, effectively bringing the Bretton Woods system to an end and rendering the dollar a fiat currency. The Bretton Woods system was over by 1973. The subsequent era was characterized by floating exchange rates. In other words, what happened was the gold standard was taken out, and today, essentially what we have is what is known as a floating system, meaning that all currencies are pegged to each other. Essentially, all of them are pegged to the dollar, if you want to look at it that way. But they're all pegged to each other, meaning you can create, like this fellow just said, as much money as you can want.
Because you don't have to match it with something that exists in reality. You know?
Right. You don't have to you don't have to peg it to the supply of gold that's out there. Gold has no value in that sense anymore. In fact, gold. You could say it has an intrinsic value because you can do things with gold, right? But gold as money, it has no value. It has as much value as anything else.
It's a rock.
Yeah, it's a rock. If you want to accept it, fine. But the day we lose confidence in money, meaning all kinds of money, from Bitcoin all the way to gold to not food. Food is good money always. But nobody will trade it once the whole thing collapses. But gold, diamonds, jewels, no value whatsoever. Okay. In fact,
you make computers out of them.
Yeah. In fact, you have computers, you have cars, you have ships, airplanes. All that has value today. But when money collapses, you won't accept a ship. You will not accept an airplane. You will not accept a car, unless it comes full of food. Then you'll accept
I'll
it.
take it.
But otherwise, you won't accept it. What are you going to do with an airplane? What are you going to fly around and see if you can find some food somewhere? Okay, here's another one. People falsely give money value. There is no value in money itself. Correct. I like trade for what is valuable rather than using a measurement based on a fairy tale. There are current lifestyles that have little use for money. Currently, okay. Again, lifestyle, you can have all that as long as the whole system doesn't collapse. When the system collapses, everybody's going to come to all those people who live without money. Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about hunter-gatherers out there, or farmers, right?
There's only 3 people who live without money. It's hunter-gatherers, like people who live in the woods.
Yeah.
People who have subsistent farming for themselves,
right.
which are also weirdos and like fringe people. And I guess monks would be the last one. People who just like
beg. Nomads, like the Bedouins, they go around with their camels. Of
But
course, they buy things and sell things.
But it doesn't amount to even 1% of the population.
No, of course not. That's true.
Oh, right.
But this is the point. The point is, when the whole system collapses, now you got to worry about defense. And so, if you've got a farm, your farm is going to be overrun.
No, my defense is you eat your food as fast as you can. There's nothing here. There's nothing to steal.
Yeah, but then you're out of luck as well. Okay, related to COVID. Here we have a fellow said Bill Gates paid someone in the Wuhan lab to release the virus with Carl Schwab's blessing. Okay, and another fellow says, why would China create the bug to collapse the Western economy and release it in Wuhan? Totally illogical. And that's why, I came up with the COVID flow chart the other day. Okay, this is the reasoning.
Oh.
Okay, it goes something like this. You got to answer the question, would Cuba, Iran, and other enemies of the American empire cooperate with the U.S. in a hoax? Okay? And if you say yes, well, I've got problems with you, and I think we remove your right to vote. Okay? And then if we continue, are there people so mean and greedy that they would have created the bug to take over the world? And if you say yes, I have if you say no, I have a tall building in New York that I'd like to sell you. Okay? Yeah, there are mean people out there. Okay? But so the issue here is, would China be complicit in a hoax in light of the fact that it intends to be the next empire? Okay, so I doubt very much that China would cooperate with the United States. I think they are competing, and to think that they would all come up with this hoax in every country of the world, okay, especially the big guys, China, Russia, and the United States, that all these, the heads of those 3 countries would agree to, in advance, to say, hey, why don't we create a virus and scare everybody in the world to death, and then we can implement these laws where we can control them a lot better, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think China would cooperate in such a thing if China's trying to take over the world.
I think we can all see that they could have adapted to the situation, but it still caught them off guard. But it's not that from coming into the situation, they're already planning, okay, guys, U.S., we all agree on this, we're going to let this go in Wuhan. That'd be kind of weird.
That's where I have a problem. And until someone can answer that question, I don't think that you can talk about a hoax. You got to justify the hoax. And the way you justify the hoax is saying, would all these enemy countries agree in advance to talk about this COVID and invent it out of nowhere?
Besides, it's so messy. You can't really plan very well when you're talking about a virus, a pandemic, because you don't know what the edges are. Like that's a bad conspiracy. If I wanted to do a conspiracy, assuming there was something to gain, throwing a pandemic is a bad idea because you don't know how powerful it'll be. You don't know how many countries it'll reach. You don't know what the consequences.
Yeah, you can't control it that well.
It's too you can't control it, which is like it doesn't seem like a good foundation to get any benefit from, or at least there are better things people would come up with.
Yeah, I doubt, and again, I doubt very much. This is my argument that all enemy countries would agree to this,
that's
and so that's the one you got to answer. If you can answer that, then I'll say that it's a hoax. Okay, but until then, I have to believe that this virus apparently is real. Okay, some people apparently are dying of this. I don't know.
Sorry, continue.
Okay, fellas, cell is not the smallest life. Okay, the issue is not smallest. I'm saying that the cell is the.
We jump real quick. What do you mean cell is not? You mean cell is not the smallest?
Yeah.
Thing we can call life.
Well, this is what I want to clarify here. That I'm saying that cell is the first or the first unit of life. Okay, that doesn't mean it's the smallest. I wasn't talking about smallest, even though I think we have a match there. I think it is the smallest as well. But this guy continues, says the smallest life unit is I think he meant protus, and he says protit, okay, or microzyma, which emerges from dead cells to perform cleanup. Okay, so let's find out what he's talking about. Okay, here
janitor cells.
Okay, so this is where we start on this. Here's the miasma theory, and this was the theory that governed most of medicine, I guess, world until 19th century. And it came from Galen, and even before them, Hippocrates. And they said diseases such as cholera and bubonic plague are caused by a miasma, okay, pollution. Okay, a noxious form of bad air. They thought it was bad air, floating in the atmosphere. Okay, miasma, poisonous vapor or mist filled with particles from decomposed matter that caused illness. Okay,
it's not that far from the truth, is it?
Well, let's find out. What came after was from Mr. Louis Pasteur, and he came up with germ theory. Okay, and that replaced this miasma theory. And it goes more or less like this. It's what we have today, essentially. That's what all the doctors believe in, or this is what they're taught, this is what they learn, this is what they teach. Okay, more or less like mathematical physics. It's grounded in stone now. Microorganisms can lead to disease. Okay, so we have these small organisms. They invade the human body and other animals. Their growth and reproduction within the host cause the disease. Okay, essentially, it's what most of us intuitively or have read somewhere. This is what we all essentially are educated to believe. Okay, let's move on, because here we have this other fellow who opposed Louis Pasteur. He was a contemporary. Okay, his name was Antoine Béchamp. Okay, also a French guy. Both of these were French. And he came up with the microzymian theory, which is what this fellow is referring to. And he had a different theory, which is no longer accepted today. But it's good to know that this theory is around, because a lot of people believe more or less along the same lines as Mr. Béchamp. Okay, tiny molecular granulations known as microzymas. Okay, small ferments. He called them like that because they tended to ferment sugar. Okay, that have been observed in the cells of plants and animals are living elements. He said there is something living which is smaller than the cell. In fact, it's part of the cell. Survives after the death of the organism. Microzyma is a builder and destroyer of cells. It precedes life at the cellular level. Microzymas are very sensitive to biological signals, responding to changes in the terrain, in other words, the environment. Okay, especially pH, he says. When the terrain becomes compromised, the microzymas change into microscopic forms. It turns into bacteria. Okay, that contributes to the development of illness. Béchamp pleomorphic theory considers the internal environment as the most important contributing factor to disease.
The microzymas turn into bacteria? So these precede even bacteria.
Yeah. So this is kind of weird, because I don't know about microzymas turning into bacteria, but this is more or less the theory. According to Béchamp, these microzymas were part of the cell. When the cell dies, the microzymas never die. So I guess he was talking about molecules and not about living entities, but he called them, or he believed that they were living entities. And, what affected the microzymas? The environment. So the theory was that it wasn't disease that got you sick and killed you. It was these microzymas which survived the cell, and because of the environment, they triggered something within your body. So it's what a lot of people believe today, that it's the environment that affects you. That's what we eat and what we breathe, and all this pollution out there. So a lot of people believe in that stuff even today, and that comes really from Béchamp. It's like we've reinvented him, or he never died, like the microzymas. And all I can tell you is that the medical establishment does not accept that theory. Everybody believes in, or more or less, I'd say 99% of the doctors out there believe in the germ theory. They go along with Mr. Louis Pasteur. Okay, so that's food for thought.
There's not a big difference between them, is there?
Well, one says it's the environment, and the other fellow says, no, it's the disease.
But environment includes the germs.
No, but this is what he was saying. He's saying there's something in the germs themselves, in this case, the cell, okay? Because you could have a germ like bacteria is a germ, and like COVID, it's a virus. And what is a virus? A virus is DNA, which is encapsulated within proteins. Okay, so that's what a virus is. And what this guy is saying, there's something on the outside or within that he calls microzymas. And these microzymas, apparently considered them living entities. He even suggested or maybe believed that they turn into bacteria or gave origin to the cell. But the point here is that these microzymas only react to the environment, internal environment inside your body. So he's saying they react to that, and that's why you get sick. Okay, so for you to consider. Okay, it's a subject I'm not very interested in at all this medical stuff, but it's for people to consider if they're going to talk about COVID being a hoax. Okay, is there a virus out there? What is a virus? Is the theory of viruses, causing disease, etc., is that the germ theory? Is that a valid theory?
Okay. At what level you want to criticize it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what people have to look at. Now, I do want to tell you that we've seen bacteria under the microscope. Viruses are much smaller. Okay, about 20 times, I think. The 20th. 1/20th the size of maybe the largest bacteria. So viruses are. Remember, virus is a molecule, but it's a special kind of molecule that has a coating. It's got a coat over it of proteins, which is what a bunch of molecules. So we have a molecule wrapped in molecules, and we call that thing, that entity, which is non-living, according to me. Okay, we call that.
It seems like the precursor to life. It feels like virus.
Yeah, and
like it's the thing between inanimate and animate.
Okay, let's find out. They asked the biologists what is a virus. Is it a living entity or is it an inert entity? And
it's a zombie.
These are the answers we get today from these are all experts. Okay, these are from the top university.
No. What did you find?
So here, no, viruses are not alive, says one guy, and the other guy says yes, viruses are alive.
Oh, that settles it.
One's from Edinburgh University, the other guy from Glasgow University. Okay, so both Scottish here. And first one says this is how he justifies why they are not alive. Okay, he says the crucial point is that viruses are not capable of independent replication. They have to replicate within a host cell, and they use or usurp the host cell machinery for this. They do not contain a full range of required metabolic processes and are dependent on their host to provide many of the requirements for their replication. If a virus is alive, should we not also consider DNA molecule to be alive?
That's a really bad logic in my estimation, because like we all depend on other things for
Okay, that's what the other guy answered. Okay, so you got the right reasoning of the second guy. He says they are not alive. I'm sorry, he says they are alive. He says, I would argue that the only satisfactory definition of life, therefore, lies in the most critical property of genetic heredity, independent evolution. Okay, evolution he's talking about here. Life is the manifestation of a coherent collection of genes that are competent to replicate within the niche in which they evolved. Viruses fulfill this definition. This fellow, David Bella, he said, after all, we all depend on something else. In other words, it's not like we're all independent reproducers.
Yeah.
And so this is the argument between these two fellows.
But they're both thinking about replication, right?
They're both thinking about replication. Let's bring in a third guy. Okay, we're going to bring in a third guy and says, our virus is alive. They ask another, this guy's from Bristol University, okay? And so what does he say? Well, he says viruses are not alive because they do not complete all of the 7 life processes. And he mentions those, the famous ones, movement, respiration, sensitivity, nutrition, etc., etc. Viruses lack essential machinery needed to what? To reproduce themselves. Everybody hits on reproduction. Okay, and that's what they're all thinking about.
Do viruses excrete?
In fact, viruses can only reproduce after infecting a living cell. Viruses can only survive for a while outside host cells. Okay, so they're all talking about.
Real quick. Do viruses do all the other 6 of these? Growth, nutrition, sensitivity.
Nutrition, you can say they eat the cell material from the cell.
Do viruses
but see, they don't really eat it. What they do is they use the atoms. Okay, because it's at the atomic level. Here you have a virus. What is it? A molecule that turns around, makes copies of itself from cell material. So it can only function inside the cell, and that's where it reproduces. If you can call that reproduction, the fact that it's producing copies of itself, it's just creating a longer molecule or making copies of itself parallel to it, so that all its kids look like it, but all we're doing is having a molecule that's making copies of itself using someone else's material. And
I like how the first one is movement.
If that's what we're gonna say is life, okay, reproduction. This is what they're all concentrated on. Well, that's why we have to define what life is. I mean, otherwise these guys are gonna, because they've been talking like this for at least 100 years.
But they have the 7 criteria.
Yeah, but I think that
Motion, excretion,
they're just going to go around in circles because they have all these factors that they think are part of life. And I think we have to define the word life, alive, living, a little more stringently, okay, a little more short, and not have so many variables there and say, well, it's the one that reproduces, the one that ages, has children, moves, etc. And so what is the problem with all these guys? I'm saying that none of them ever defined words scientifically. None of the scientists alive today ever defined or learned to define words scientifically, and they never found a reason to define words scientifically in such a way that, they're not only that they are scientific, but that you can use them consistently, that you can know what you're talking about. If they don't define what life is, they're going to go around in circles arguing.
But again, the 7 criteria, you shouldn't have deleted that, because the 7 criteria seem to be what they all hinge their alive or not aliveness on.
And not really, because the one they really concentrated on was reproduction. I mean, that's where they put the emphasis. Yeah, it's like they mentioned the other, but then they said, but forget about all that. We're going to do reproduction.
This one.
So this is where I'm going to finish this the extinction part today, and it goes here like this. None of these folks ever defined the disciplines of science. And I give you 4 examples here. What is biology? The scientific study of life. That's the formal definition you'll find out there. Study. In science, we don't study anything. Science is not the study of anything.
Well, that's the relief.
I mean, you can study all year and not know anything. So because you studied, you're a scientist. Everybody studies. I mean, a kindergartner studies. Is he a scientist? So the word study should be removed from the definition of science of any discipline. And you see it in all of them.
So
they're all the studies.
You're saying the scientific of life just ruled the word study?
Yeah, and the first thing you find about the word life, there is currently no consensus regarding the definition of life. They have no definition, but they're all biologists and they talk around in circles of what if a virus is living or not.
Well, because there's also anaerobic things that we call living, and there's all these exceptions to the rules.
Yeah.
Do robots count? All these things. Does a rock count?
And so here you have physics, the natural science of what? Studies matter, energy, and force. What is paleontology? The scientific what? Study. Okay, of life that existed prior to blah, 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 blah. Study of fossils to what? To classify organisms. That's stamp collecting. That's not science. All these people talk about studying and collecting and,
you know what? I'm going to defend the word study because that is essentially what you do, isn't it?
I don't study. I explain.
You get to the bottom of physics. What is that if not studying?
But all you do is I could study and I could reach the wrong answer or it's explanation. That is explanation is science, not study.
But isn't explanation a type of studying?
No, it's a conclusion of study.
Because
And then philosophy. What is philosophy? The study of fundamentals, nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. No, the study of existence, we're going to call it that, is known as physics. Physics studies existence, not philosophy.
I thought people studied existence.
Well, that's why here. This is why I put it as definitions in parallel to that, so that you can see where I'm coming from on this. Okay, and just to mention that philosophy, you go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The only word you won't find defined is the word philosophy. They don't have the word philosophy defined in the dictionary, the Encyclopedia of Philosophy at Stanford.
They didn't define their own word.
Yeah, they didn't define it. So I had to define it. So what is it? Science, rational explanations. Biology, explanation involving processes and mechanisms. Physics, and behaviors. Philosophy, of living entities.
Living.
Yeah, and now we have a definition for living, a natural object that moves against the path of least resistance. I used to say it's gravity. My son here corrected me one day and said, no, it's the path of least resistance, and I think he's correct. So I hate him because he corrected me.
Well, to be more specific, the reason we use that wording is going against the path of least resistance basically is a long-winded form of saying you move on your own. Yeah, instead of letting the wind push you, push against the wind.
And it's correct because we not only push upwards against gravity, like when I jump, but we push against walls sideways as well. Okay. And we also push up, like when we're pushing a box upwards, so we're pushing something upwards, I guess. Okay, physics, rational explanation of causes and mechanisms. What is philosophy? Explanations of human behavior, specifically purposes and reasons. And paleontology, is that collecting bones and putting them in a museum? No, it's rational explanations of mass and background extinctions. That's what a paleontologist is out there for. He's supposed to explain death. He's a necrologist. He's a medical examiner. He's a detective that has to tell us how animals died in the past. Otherwise, we don't need a paleontologist. What people want to know is, how did the dinosaurs die? Don't tell me that you collected some bones and gave it a fancy name and assembled it and put it in a museum. That's a stamp collector.
They're glorified stamp collectors. I thought that is what they were.
Okay, moving on here. Let's do some physics.
Someone says philosophy is a synonym for religion, but you actually split those two, right? Philosophy is a synonym for religion.
No. Obviously, philosophy is not a synonym of religion.
Oh.
That's exactly where the error is. No. Philosophy is a science. Science and a philosophy. It's the science, philosophy, right? It's the science that explains behavior. In other words, why you did something, purposes, reasons. So no, philosophy is not religion. Religion is what math does. Math moves. First of all, recommendation, but moving concepts around when you're doing physics, recommendations, politics, that's all religion. That's religion.
Mostly opinion. Recommendations. I think religion is mostly recommendation on how the best way to live is. But philosophy is more explaining the past tense of that. Why did someone do that? You could get those two mixed up, though, because you could use religion to explain why someone did that. Oh, he had XYZ religion. But I guess that would be philosophy.
No, but again, that's a reason why he did something. You could say it's because of his religion, the way he was brought up, so you're explaining his behavior. No problem there. But giving a recommendations, telling you how to rule the world, the politics, that's opinion. And recommendation, opinion, that's religion. That's just, everybody's an expert in religion, in opinions.
And business.